All right, hey there. Welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Paul Heires.
And I'm Tim Seipel.
And we got some MLB action for you today. Me and Tim are going to start doing some MLB videos over the summer, and I think it's going to be some fun. And we're going to be posting, every couple weeks or so, and keep you guys up to date in the MLB. Finally, we had some baseball on this podcast.
I'm getting a little sick and tired of football, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm a Packers fan, so hearing about Aaron Rodgers, I just don't want to talk about football at all, so this is perfect for me. Let's just dive right into the MLB, am I right?
Yes, definitely. So, first up, we've got some power rankings from Tim. I'll let you take it away.
All right, well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the first five. So like the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And I'm not going to go super into depth with those, but then I'm going to go into depth with my top 5. So at 10, I have the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays have been playing extremely well lately. They are hitting really well, even without George Springer, which is kind of a surprise. So that's why I have them there. Also at 9, I have the Cubs. I believe they just swept the Padres. So they have been playing extremely well to beat a team that really, they're pitching for the Padres, which I'll go over later. They have been fantastic. So Cubs really sneaking into the top 10 because of fantastic performance. Next, I have the Astros, the best hitting team in the league. As much as I hate to say it, they have a good team. And they're hitting 271 as a team, so you can't keep them out of there. Then the Oakland A's, they're just a solid overall team. They've been playing well, real consistent. And then I have the Red Sox, who, as I hate to say it as a Yankees fan, have a pretty good team. I feel like they always have a bad season, and then they follow it up with a really good season. I don't know if there's a team like that out there that goes from so bad to so good so quickly. So Paul, I don't know if you have any thoughts about those first 5.
Yeah, obviously you touched on the Astros and how it's hard to like them after that whole scandal. I mean, am I right? I wasn't an Astros fan by any means, but you're kind of rooting for them a little bit. Just they were so bad for so long, and then the whole thing with the trash cans comes out, and it's hard to like them at this point.
Yeah, I think it's good. The drama is good for the MLB. I found there's an interesting statement. This is a little bit off topic, but with the golf, there's a beef between 2 golfers right now named DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka. And honestly, one of them said, this is honestly good for our game, good for publicity. People are going to see it. I think that's the same dynamic we're getting with the Astros is, yeah, we hate them. Yeah, we don't like that they did it. But at the same time, fans are coming together. Fans are making signs. And it's adding a whole lot more fun to the game that, baseball can at sometimes be a little bit boring. I mean, even from a person, like a baseball player myself, like I can sometimes find it a little bit, makes me tired. So, yeah, I honestly think it's good for the game for the most part.
Yeah, and interesting you got the Red Sox in there. I like them at that spot at 6. And we've seen this so many times in sports, teams just turning it around out of nowhere. Do you have any idea? Do you think it's like in the locker room or certain players are playing better? What do you think is the reason behind this Red Sox success?
Honestly, it kind of confuses me because they don't even have Chris Sale back. Chris Sale's obviously has been one of their best pitchers over the years. And I don't know. I don't know if they have a good farm system where they just bring up guys out of nowhere. They must be doing something really, really good in the front office. I have no clue because this has been going on for a good 6, 7, 8 years where they are the worst in the MLB. And then the next year they come out on top and end up winning the World Series. I mean, I don't think that there's any other team in sports that does it like the Red Sox do. Like it's insane to me. It's kind of incomprehensible for a sports team to do that. But now we're going to go into the top 5, and I'm going to go with the Dodgers at number 5. They're extremely talented team. Obviously, they picked up Albert Pujols towards the middle part of where we're at, and he hasn't done bad for them. But they have the 3rd best ERA of 3.22. I mean, Julio Urias, Clayton Kershaw. And there's a couple other as well. they're a fantastic pitching staff, and they have the 11th best batting average in the league. And so that's why I have them at 5. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Pujols coming over from their crosstown rivals, and he's really fit in there nicely, a lot better than he did at the Angels. I think that's a good spot for the Dodgers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Albert Pujols is going to be a starter consistently towards the end of his career, but he can definitely come in those big moments and perform well because he's been there before. He has that experience, and he's really shown it, over the past month that he's been still in LA, but with the Dodgers this time. So next I have the Giants, winners of 9 of 12. I know I saw Crawford, their shortstop, had 2 home runs the other day. Just an insane game on his, I believe it was record best, like at most games played for a Giant in a Giant uniform. So at shortstop. So yeah, honestly, Giants have been on a tear. They're 38 and 23. 38 and 23. That kind of, it just
best record in the league.
Yeah, it's so surprising to me because last year they weren't this good. They weren't competitive. And now, who knows what goes on with COVID, how that all works out. Obviously, in the NBA, you can kind of compare it to the bubble. Like some teams perform better in the bubble than they do in an actual playoff scenario with fans. And that's kind of what we saw with the Miami Heat. But yeah, I don't know. Giants at 4, what do you think? Too high, too low?
That could be something. They're maybe feeding off their more full stadiums. Another case of the Red Sox, I think, just interesting how teams kind of flip the switch after 1 year. Usually takes more of a rebuild than that.
Yeah.
We'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah, you almost think of the Browns. Maybe their front office was just that bad where they could not rebound from an awful season like these teams are doing. Obviously, it's different sport. It's definitely different draft process, and so it's not 1-to-1. We're not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to oranges. But at the same time, it's crazy, it's fun, and we love it. And so at number 3, I have the Padres. They have the best ERA in the league with a 2.96. I mean, Blake Snell is phenomenal right now. Yu Darvish, they are in control of games. Their only issue is their hitting, which is kind of surprising because every time I get on Instagram, there's always an ESPN highlight of Fernando Tatis hitting a home run. I believe it's honestly become a Fernando Tatis fan page, which I honestly don't mind. I love it. Fernando Tatis is good for the game. He's a great player, but they're hitting 20th in the league. They are not hitting the ball well, and that's why they're at 3. I mean, if they're hitting 10th in the league, they're hitting a lot better. They're competing more. I think their record's obviously a lot better if they're hitting better. They just can't seem to get the bat around on the ball, and so that's kind of tough to see with such a talented roster. But at this point, they're going to have to rely on their pitching, especially in the long run.
Yeah, Tatis has really propelled kind of their whole offense at this point for the for the Padres. And if they want to compete with the Dodgers in that competitive those top 3 teams in the NL West, man, they're going to have to figure it out offensively if they want to win that race in the West. Yeah,
you think about the pitching for the Dodgers going up against the hitting of the Padres. Like I would honestly choose the Dodgers to win a 7-game series over the Padres because the Dodgers both have pitching, like they have pitching, but they also hit better than the Padres. So, I mean, it just goes to show, obviously, pitching wins games, but you have to hit. You have to be able to win it. And another example of that is Jacob deGrom, 2 losses with an ERA of, I think it was like 0.67.
Yeah.
Like, that's just insane. He's been playing out of his mind, and still somehow he has 2 losses and maybe even more. I'm not totally sure, but he's lost games with that insane ERA. So, little plug for Jacob deGrom, insane year for him. But now we move on to the number 2 spot with the White Sox. They have really come around nicely. Their pitching staff is fantastic. They've won 10 of the last 14 games. ERA 4th best in the league with 3.25 and the 4th best batting average of .253. So this really gets you thinking. This is a team that's extremely solid, top 5 in both of those categories. Obviously, those aren't the universal categories to say, oh, they're the best hitting team overall or they're the best batters overall. But in the same time, they are very productive, and it is clear in the stats and it's clear in the record too. So White Sox, I think they got something. They're coming around for sure.
And watching them as a Royals fan, I get to see a lot of their games, but they usually rely on their pitching. And this year, as you mentioned, they've really come around with the sticks. Plus 86 on the run differential. That's second to the Dodgers in the league. They're really doing well at the plate this year.
Yeah. They are as productive as anybody right now. And that brings me to my number one, which I'm sure people can guess by now. But I have the Rays at the number one spot. They're boasting the they're boasting the best record in the MLB. And the Rays they've been on a tear. Sixth in ERA with 3.32, third highest run differential of 75. I personally have Austin Meadows on my fantasy team, and he has been rather productive. I feel like, especially in fantasy, I have a couple of Rays players on my teams, and every time they go off, they're getting like 9, 10, 12 points a game. It's insane. They can really dominate if they get ahead of any team that they face.
Yeah, doing well in their division, and that's key when you want to make the playoffs. Doing well against the Red Sox and the Yankees, obviously. And it's no secret why they went to the World Series last year. If they keep going at this rate, I think they could easily make it again this year.
Honestly, the AL East, I believe that's the AL East, right? That's a powerful division. I mean, I personally have 3 of those teams in my top 10, and the Yankees aren't that far off. Obviously, their pitching has been top 5 in the league with considering ERA, but their hitting has really struggled, which has been a surprise. But yeah, I mean, the Rays have done really well against those teams, and they have to face them a lot. So at that point, if they're this good, they're clearly going to be, I think they're going to be one of the best teams at the end of the season, which is obviously hard to say now, but at the same time, they're proving it. They're definitely proving it. So,
yeah, a couple honorable mentions I would throw in there. Maybe the Brewers, a hell of a streak they went on a few last week, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the Mets have been playing well. You mentioned DeGrom. What an ERA for him. So let's get into some biggest surprises. What do you think so far surprising to you this season so far?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that pops out is obviously the Twins. Last year, in the shortened season, they played really, really well. They came out and I can't remember their record, but I mean, obviously they made the playoffs. They performed.
I think it was over. I can't remember last season, but the season before they had over 100 wins. So they've been doing well.
They've been they're clearly like a built organization that has consistent success over the past few years, but 24-37. That hurts. That bites. And I know a few Twins fans, and I know they aren't too happy right now. I don't know. It's confusing because their hitting is so good, but their pitching is awful. Their pitching is 26th in the league, and their hitting is in the top 5. Like, that just kind of goes to show you kind of have to have both of those up, and both of those in the top 10, top 15 to perform well. If one is not performing as well as the other, I mean, pitching, if you can't pitch, doesn't really matter how much you can hit, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, they third worst in the AL, and they've lost a couple key players this year. But yeah, as you mentioned, their pitching really nowhere to be found. Barrios, kind of the only guy that's really making much production for them on the starting rotation.
Right. I mean, baseball is such a long season that it's one of those sports where you have to wait to really know for sure if the team will last. The teams that start off hot aren't always the teams that end hot. So it's really who's hot after the All-Star break, who's hot, in that August, September, October, that in that time frame. And so obviously right now the Rays, as I mentioned, were in the top, but who knows? That could very easily be the Brewers in September. So that's kind of what makes baseball fun, but also hard to keep up on. And so now we're going to go into best surprises. And as I've mentioned a little bit of, the Giants are having a heck of a season, 38-23, one of the best records in the league. I don't know. I did not see this coming. I'll be honest with you, Paul. Like I thought the Giants were probably going to be one of the worst teams in their division again, and they're coming out, firing on all cylinders. Now we're going into a little bit more of recent news dealing with pitching substance debacle. As of recently, I know the MLB has put out, I believe, a statement that they're going to start having umpires check pitchers more for suspicious substances or foreign substances that they don't want them to be using. Obviously, the ball's moving in different directions that hitters are used to. Paul, I know you have some stats on that, on hitting this year and how that's drastically different from previous years.
Yeah, so as of last week, the overall MLB batting average was 236, which is really low if you know anything about baseball. I mean, some of the best hitters are over 350, and you're just not seeing that this year. Over 20% of at-bats are strikeouts league-wide, and multiple teams have had a significant percent increase in RPM or spin rate, with the Dodgers at over 7% higher than last season. I've heard reports that over 90% of pitchers are using some kind of substance, whether it be pine tar or otherwise. What's the solution to how we deal with this issue?
Yeah, there were a couple interesting things that I saw on just the different substances. I know rosin is another one of those substances that is used. Pine tar, obviously, sunscreen mixed with rosin. I saw that too. So they obviously been pretty creative. The places that they've put it is, in their belt sometimes. Obviously, the hat, the brim of the hat, and some place in your arm has been more popular, but easier to catch. So I think the belt has definitely been the hardest place to really be diligent about. And so I honestly don't know how you fix this other than what they're doing right now. And some players don't even want this to be fixed. I know there was an interview with Pete Alonso, the New York Mets, one of the New York Mets best hitters, and he was talking about how we've got players that are pitching over 100 miles per hour, which is, I don't quite think we realize just how fast that is, especially with, in previous years, that's just not as common. I mean, we think 20 years, 30 years back, you're not seeing anybody reach triple digits. And so he was saying that he prefers the substances so that the pitchers will be able to have more control over the ball and not put the batters in danger. But at the same time, my initial thought is if you're pitching, you should be able to control the baseball. Like, you're in the MLB, you're a professional pitcher, you shouldn't have to rely on other substances. And if you are relying on other substances, take a little bit off. Like, maybe try to be more accurate than just throwing it past the batter. So I don't know what the long-term solution is. I don't know if there is a long-term solution. Obviously, this is somewhat similar to the steroid scandal. Obviously, not as blown up, but I think almost everybody's doing it, and it's kind of crazy to think about the pitchers that aren't doing it. Like, they're performing not as well. Like,
they're falling behind.
They're definitely falling behind, and it's almost not fair to the pitchers who are naturally good and don't have to deal with any other substances to have better control. So I don't know. Do you think that there's something that they should do other than what they're planning on doing, or is this kind of the solution that you have to roll with, especially mid-season where you can't really adjust very well?
Well, I might be in the minority when I say this, but I'm a fan of pitching duels. I like low-scoring games where pitchers will go the distance, and I just think that's more exciting than just having new pitcher every inning. But that being said, I think there's a lot of fans out there that want to see home runs. They want to see base hits. And so when there's less of that, that's going to take attention away from the game. And so when that becomes a problem, then things need to be done. I think at this point, like you said, it hasn't really blown out of proportion. It's not affecting the game as much as the steroids. But I think, where do you draw the line, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And if 90% of pitchers are using it, are you going to punish everyone? I mean, if everyone's at the same level anyway, I don't know. It's a, hate to do this, but it's a sticky situation because
that was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. That was nice.
You know what I'm saying? Like because then so then how is that fair to the batters? You know what I'm saying? And then
how's that fair to the other pitchers that are pitching without any help with anything else? Like it's more complicated than, just black and white. It's not something that you can just easily make a decision on. I think steroids was one of those things where you could test for. You could kind of have a better understanding of who all was doing it. Not 90% of hitters were doing it. Like, it was nowhere close to that number. There was a good amount, but nowhere close to that number. So it's a lot. It really is a different situation to the point where it's more subtle, but it's more widespread. With steroids, it was quite obvious and a little bit more concentrated. But with this, it's kind of gone out of control. And at this point, you have to think about, this is a pitcher's, like this. The pitchers, this is their daily job. This is something that they do to make money for their family. So if 90% of pitchers are doing this, who isn't going to also pick it up so that they can keep their job? So often pitchers who don't perform well go down to AAA, AA, single A. There's things that can happen where your salary isn't as much as you'd hoped. And how do you adjust for that? If everybody's doing it, why not? Really, it's a lot more apparent and a lot more, it's all over the league. It's happening. And so
it's so noticeable. You can't ignore it at this point. Right. And I gotta say, I've definitely noticed a lot less runs being scored this season.
With that being said, the lively discussion, thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Paul and I do. And
we should be back here a couple weeks. We'll mix it up.
We'll make sure to make time for you. Don't worry. We will make time for you. So with that being said, this has been Unqualified Opinions. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you later.